Hey guys, before we get started, we want to tell you about our awesome partners, Syrah Technologies, Gregg Vet Clinic, Hicks Chicks, Kenny Chesney's Chair Bay Rum, and all of our awesome partners that you see on the screen right now. Make sure to do business with them and tell them Miss Lou Champion sent you. Hey guys, Ronnie Calhoun here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight, and I am in the studio with my man, Joe Domina, also known as Backpacker Joe.
That's right.
How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's awesome to be back.
Yeah, dude. I was just telling you before we came on air that I had seen that you finished your journey walking across America, and I wrote your name down, and I was like, I'm not going to bother him now, but in a couple of months I'll reach out to him. And then our mutual friend downtown, Carla Brown, reached out to me and said, hey, Joe's coming to town. Would you have any interest in sitting down with him? And I was like, yeah, I've already written it down. So I was like, heck yeah, let's make it happen.
It's awesome when the timing works out like that.
Yeah. And before we get started on this follow-up, just to kind of set the scene, Joe was walking through Natchez back in February, and we heard about your story through Carla. Mm-hmm. And you and her came in, and we learned a lot about you and your story, your mission, and all of that. So I would encourage everybody to go back and just, if you're on Facebook, just type in Miss Lou Champions Backpacker Joe, and it should come up. I think it was February 18th is when we released it. I would encourage everybody to go back and watch that full interview to really understand where we're at today. But man, let's pick up. So you did the thing. Here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are in October.
Yeah. Atlantic to Pacific.
Yeah. So you started in New York.
Yep. Yeah. Just outside of the Liberty State Park is where I started.
Yeah.
So just outside New York and New Jersey, in view of the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah. Man. And then we talked about in the other video where he came, but let's talk about kind of where you went after this.
Yeah. So from here, I went continuing west and a little bit south to Alexandria. And then I went up to Shreveport. And then from Shreveport, I took one step into Arkansas because I was so close. I had to get another state. And then I went into North Texas. And then from North Texas, I jumped up towards Oklahoma City. And then came back into Texas through the Panhandle, went through Amarillo, and then went through northern New Mexico and northern Arizona. And then we were about 5 miles away from the Four Corners. So went up to Colorado and Utah too to put another couple states on.
Yeah.
And then from Arizona just did like 25 miles, 26 miles in Nevada, and then the rest of the way to California, and I finished in Santa Monica.
Nice. So you were going, if I'm not mistaken, there was something in Oklahoma City that you wanted to see.
Right. Yeah. So I call it the walk or the pilgrimage. I'm not exactly sure how to talk about it. Walk across America. Mm-hmm. But there were about 4 pilgrimage sites that I wanted to visit, and one of them was in Oklahoma City. It's a really amazing Christian man. His name's Father Stanley Rother. He died proclaiming the faith through some tumultuous times in Central America. He went down there. His bishop called him back, and his famous line was, "The shepherd doesn't run when the wolves come." So he went back down there and died for his faith. And so they have a little church. It's a beautiful church in honor of him and in honor of our Lord. And so I went up there to see that. And then the last pilgrimage spot was in honor of a missionary who was way back in the day, like even before the U.S. was founded. His name's Blessed Junipero Serra. So I got to see where he walked. He walked from somewhere in Mexico all the way up to like Sonoma, California on his journey before they had 7-Elevens and hotels and motels.
Yeah. That's really cool that you were able to do that. And we were laughing earlier that it was pretty normal. And then whenever you came to Natchez, we did the interview.
Yeah.
And I really did feel kind of bad after, but somebody picked up our interview, a national Christian organization. I can't remember which one, but I looked and they had 750,000 followers because somebody had messaged me and said, "Hey, dude, we saw whoever it was shared y'all's video randomly."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Who is that?" And I went and looked. I was like, "Oh my goodness!" But then that's whenever people from all over the country started seeing your story,
Right. Yeah.
and you had people just like lined up on the side of the highway, like literally
Oh
parked.
yeah.
I mean, I felt kind of bad because I was like, he's not even gonna be able to walk. Like he's gonna really not like Natchez after this. But
No, not at all, man. Not at all.
yeah. So how was all of that? How'd you
So
handle all of that? And
yeah, I think it was. It's kind of a cool story behind it. So there was definitely like highs and lows. There were points where I was very unknown. There were points when I was very known, and all of that was just like a beautiful gift. There were different seasons along the trip, and yeah, it all started in Holloway, Louisiana. I think there was your video took off, and then Carla Brown put a post on Facebook, and that got umpteen shares overnight, and so everybody in the surrounding area kind of knew that I was coming in.
Yeah.
And so that post she put out overnight, and it blew up overnight. And that night, I was actually staying at an RV park in Holloway, right next to a septic system. So it's like it wasn't the best accommodations, but I was super grateful they let me stay there. And then the next day, people just started stopping me on the street, and I was like, "What is going on?" And then Carla called me and was like, "Did you see my post?" And I was like, "No, I didn't."
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, just be prepared to stop." And I was like, "Yeah, a few people did." And then from there, when I got into Pineville, sometimes it was like 8, 9 cars piled up at the same time waiting to talk. So
well, I think that's what happened is her post, she was like, go back and watch this video, and people started seeing that. She was like, please share. People started sharing that, and I think that's how the video got picked up.
Yeah.
And it was from her original post letting people know that it was coming. I mean, I had people reaching out to us from like Louisiana, like way over in Louisiana and like Texas and stuff like that. Like, hey, do you know when he's coming through? I'm like, I don't know anything. Like, I know everything that's in the video. That's really all I know.
Right. Yeah.
And but so, I mean, how do you handle that, man? Because you're trying to walk, and you're grateful. I'm sure in one hand, but then also it's a little bit of a burden, I guess. But what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's I definitely walked less miles. I think I was averaging on the days that I was walking somewhere between 10 to 15 miles at that point. I did my first marathon day on the trace, so I did get 26 miles in. So it just kind of depended on the day, but in Louisiana, I was probably getting about 5 to 8 miles a day.
Yeah.
And that was, long days, like 10 to 12 hours on the road. And so definitely walking less miles. But as I thought about it and prayed about it, there was a temptation to get upset, but I don't really think that was of God or that was the right way to go about it, because my main mission for the whole thing was to pray for the country.
Yeah.
And so as people were coming up, everybody was super open to pray. There was a little, I was praying about it, and one thing that came into my mind was picture for a prayer, or prayer for a picture. And so every time we took a picture, I just asked anybody, hey, is there anything that I can pray for you for? And if they said yes, we prayed about it. But if not, we just said a prayer for our country right there on the side of the road. So it just took a little bit of reframing of like, what am I here for, and what is my main goal? And my main goal was to pray. So I didn't see it as an obstacle or a burden or anything like that. It was just a new season. I was a little doubtful. I was like, okay, 5 miles a day. I don't know how I'm going to make it across the country if we do it at this rate.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to be 46 years old at this rate. Yeah.
It did slow down at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like I really like that answer and respect that answer a lot. That's interesting, and it's on point for you. What I know about you now, it's on point, and it's on. That's your mindset.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of wisdom to that. And, I was very curious that whenever I was seeing it, I was like, I wonder how he's handling it, because I mean, it can go either direction, I mean, some people get very frustrated and all that. And then there's another thing I wanted to ask you about. If I'm not mistaken, you met a guy along the way, right?
Yeah.
So
that's probably one of the most miraculous things that happened on the whole trip. So I call him Elijah, because the first time that we met, he was very inspired by the prophet Elijah, and I was very inspired by John the Baptist. So there's that kinship there. And we met in Whitesboro, Texas, just north of Dallas. And it was on April 3rd when we met. And I was coming up Highway 82, and he was on Highway 82. And he had walked through Paris, Texas, and Sherman, Texas. And from there, a couple people had asked him if he was Backpacker Joe, and he's like, "No, who's that?" And he's like, "Well, he's another guy who's walking across the country." And so when we met up on U.S. Highway 82, he didn't have any social media. I didn't know who he was. He knew that I was on that road, but that was about it. So when we met up, I saw him, and I'm like, "Man, that's a heck of a cart. Like, it's 7 feet wide and 2.5 feet, I guess 7 feet wide and 2.5 feet long." And so when he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, are you Backpacker Joe?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "My name's Elijah. I'm walking across the country too." And I said, "Oh my gosh, no way." Because even since Tennessee, it had been kind of on my heart, like, man, this country is a long country, you know? It'd be good to have some brotherhood along the way. And so, yeah, when he came up and said that, I was like, man, this might be an answer to prayer. But then the first thought that came into my head was, oh, shoot, he could be walking east.
Yeah.
So I said, "Which way you walking?" He said, "I'm walking west." And I said, "Oh, good, let's walk." And we started talking, and just the similarities of what God was calling us to do. He also felt called by God to walk across the country and to pray for the country. And there are 5 idols that both of us were really praying against, that we would give our whole heart and our whole mind back to God. And we called them like different things, but we were praying for the same thing, against the same idols. And just he started in the summer of 23. I started in the summer of 23. The first time it came into his head was late 2017. The first time the walk had come into my head was early 2018. So just the similarities, and the fact that we met up randomly on the side of the road. It's like, let alone in Texas, in the whole U.S., that we're walking on the same road, the same direction. I finally just like popped the question after about 3 hours of feeling each other out. I was like, "Hey man, what do you think about walking to California together?" And he said yes, but he had 2 caveats. The first one was he felt very called by God to not be in the public eye at all. And so that's why I use a pseudonym. His real name isn't Elijah, but I just call him that. So he doesn't feel like he should be in the public eye at all. That was never really a conviction of mine. I just knew that I wanted to be off social media for that time.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was he never wanted to touch a dollar the whole time. So for me in my journey, I knew that God was asking me to start with no money, to never ask for money. But if somebody gave me money, I would say thank you.
Yeah.
But for him, he started with no money, never asked for money. And if somebody said, "Here, I want to help and bless your ministry," he would say, "Thank you so much, but actually I feel called to not use a dollar," as a testimony that you can trust God over trusting in money. So after those 4 months of walking together, I went even a little bit more extreme. I sent all my money back to my mom in a T-shirt, and we went on our way towards California for 4 months without using a dollar.
Wow. So you just told people we would appreciate a meal or something like that.
Yeah. So his particular rule, which I adopted because I respected it. I had a couple of things that I wanted to do, but he just had very specific things that he felt like God was calling him to do. So his rule was that he could never ask for food. The 3 things that he could ask for were a place to charge his phone, a place to rest, and for water. But if anybody ever asked us, "Do you guys need anything?" that would be the open door to let our needs be known. So a lot of times people would come up and say, "Hey, can I buy you a meal, or do you need anything?" And then we would just make our needs known. We could receive whatever we needed from people, but it had to be God's initiative, which was just like really fun. And it didn't take too much for me to think about doing it, because it's like, well, he started walking in South Carolina, and he walked to Texas with this way of doing it. And so I'm like, well, if you made it this far, I'm sure there's something to it, and so I can do it too.
Was he your age or is he an older guy?
Yeah, so that was another thing that was like really common was he's like 4 or 5 months younger than me.
Okay, so y'all were about the same age.
Yeah.
I don't know why in my brain, whenever I heard this story, I was picturing like an older man. And yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, that's whenever you kind of. I remember Carla trying to say like, "Hey, he doesn't really want to be on social media and all of that." At some point.
Yeah, and that was just to respect what Elijah wanted to do.
Yeah.
I thought it was a sacrifice that I was willing to make because it was never really something that I set out to do.
Exactly.
To be Facebook famous or whatever, but I just wanted to roll with whatever God had in that moment. And so when he expressed that desire, I was like, okay, I can kind of pull back a little bit to honor what I feel like God is doing in his life. So it was never something that I was like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. It was just to respect what God was doing in his life.
How'd you feel whenever you got to the end?
Oh man.
Like when you took that last step, you're like,
people always ask me like, what were you thinking? I was like, honestly, I had no thoughts. It was just like pure joy, you know? It was a cloudy day in Santa Monica. It was kind of chilly out. And
you went to the pier right there?
We went to the pier. And then after that, we went down to the beach and then jumped in the ocean and rode waves for about, just like body surfing on little waves. Nothing.
Yeah.
I've never been on a surfboard, but for about 20 minutes or so. And my mom and my good friend were in town, so my mom flew in and my buddy drove my car out. So we were able to finish with them. And my mom asked me like, "What are you thinking?" And I was like, "Honestly, I'm just like really happy to be here."
Yeah. So
surreal.
So what happens now? So you've got your mom in town, you've got your friend, you've got Elijah there. So
yeah.
Where did you and Elijah part ways at that, or after that, or did you hang for a little bit? Or?
Yeah. So my mom flew in that morning, and she's a trooper. She walked 7 miles with us the last day. And my buddy got there a little bit later. He drove my car, parked it, and then he walked about 3 or 4 miles with us. And so we all made it. And then we had booked a hostel in Santa Monica, so we all went back there and showered up. And then my sister flew into town too that night, and we all had dinner together. And then my dad and my grandmother, they both live in Las Vegas. So
I remember you saying that, yeah.
Yeah, my buddy Elijah and I, so we drove, my sister Elijah and myself, we all drove to Las Vegas after that. So my mom and my friend John, who drove out my car, they flew back to the Midwest, and then the three of us drove to Las Vegas because we finished on August 8th, 2024, and my grandmother had her 91st birthday party on August 10th. So we drove back that Friday, and then I was able to celebrate with like basically it was a huge like Italian, lots of food, celebrate my grandma turning 91, which was really awesome.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
And then Elijah ended up flying out of Vegas back to where his parents live in Ohio.
So have you talked to him? Do you stay in touch? Or?
Yeah. He lives in Texas. So on my way back from Vegas, I came and visited him in Texas. So that was awesome.
I guess after you walk halfway across the country with somebody, you're buddies for life at that point.
Absolutely, yeah.
You either can't stand each other or you're buddies for life.
There were points. You know, walking together for 4 months, being together every day with the difficulties and stuff. There were points where we really hashed things out and we just had a real relationship. But I can definitely say he's one of my good friends now, which is really neat.
Yeah, man, I get hangry for like 30 minutes and nobody wants to be around me.
That's right.
I can only imagine doing that.
That's so real.
Man, I've got just some questions that kind of popped up, and I just wanted to kind of go through some of these and ask. But
absolutely.
One of the ones that I thought was cool is in what ways has your relationship with God changed during your walk?
Yeah. So I got kind of sentimental right around Flagstaff because I had about 800 miles left. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I had already walked about 2,500 miles. So it was kind of like, man, I can kind of see the end, you know? And then I start to think like, oh, man, I can see the end. Like I got 3/4 of the country behind me and a fourth left to go. So I started to think about it, and there were a number of things that God brought up from that first 3/4 of the trip that were really impactful for me. And I look back on it again after I finished, and I think they stand true. So there's like 7 of them total. And the first one is that like fear and anxiety, they have no place in the Christian life. And I say that cautiously because I know a lot of people struggle with anxiety in our world, and I don't want to seem like I'm not sensitive to that because it is something that's difficult. But there's a difference between prudence and, like figuring things out, trying to be wise with what God has given us, and fear and anxiety. So that first one was that fear and anxiety really don't have a place in the Christian life.
Yeah, just to tack onto that, I would say, I guess true faith is believing that God's going to provide.
Amen.
And you push that to the max. So yeah.
Yeah. It says in the Bible, I think we mentioned it here the last time I was here, but 365 times it says, "Do not fear."
Yeah.
And it says we got a reminder every day.
Yeah. That is hard in today's world. I mean, it's difficult. So, okay. So that's number one.
Yeah. The next one, ask God first. That was one of the things that I learned on the trip. There's a story about that when we were in a real small town in New Mexico. It was north of Albuquerque. I don't remember the exact town name, but the whole septic system for the town was out. So we didn't have any money. So we really relied on gas stations or convenience stores to fill up our water tanks. Because sometimes I think the farthest we went between places where we could fill up was 45 miles. So sometimes we're filling up for 2-3 days in order to get water. So they don't have any water available from the tap because it's all not potable at that point because of the sewer system. And so we sat down, we prayed, we asked God for water, and it really reminded me of a story from the Old Testament. But my first inclination was like, well, we got to like go ask other people for water, like we got to go and we got to go to the Dollar General and hang out there and make sure that we get bottles of water so that we can continue our walk. And Elijah was like, hey, can we just like sit down and pray and read a psalm? It was a psalm about, God providing, making a way in the wilderness. So we did. And then after that, we had a really good, really friendly priest who was really helping us the last couple of days. So we called him and asked him if he would be willing to bring us some water in the situation. And he said yes. But many, many times when something went wrong, I would look to myself or to other people in order to aid. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But one thing that God taught me on the walk was always ask him first. So that was the second one.
Okay.
The third one is you can't outplan God, which is kind of similar to what I was talking about before about asking God. So a lot of times I feel like in myself, and a lot of times because we have so many things that we're able to do now, right? In our modern day, it's like you want to see where you're going, you got the GPS. You want to buy food, water, you got money. So it's like it's all kind of right at our fingertips, and it's really easy to forget about God and to just plan our life according to however we want. So that taking away of money and taking away of my own agency was really something that was like, okay, yeah, like God's going to provide for me. You can't outplan God. And just like the adventure of it all, Ronnie, was like the main thing. I think when like I noticed in my own life before the walk how me trying to control and plan everything out kind of sapped the adventure of life, and obviously, like, it was a season, right? You got to plan. I'm not saying that you don't need to plan anything, but there was just such an adventure in all of that really made a reminder of like, God is a God of adventure, and He wants a full life for us. And a lot of times we just plan out what we need to.
Well, just kind of jumping in on that one. It's a season, but the lesson that I'm hearing from it right now is the balance. It's you don't have to go extreme,
right.
But there's also we need to get closer to being in balance than we are now.
Right.
Because a lot of us, including myself, we try to plan everything, and like you said, there's nothing wrong with it, but there's also got to be that reliance. That is this God's plan or is this my plan?
Yeah.
Is this His map or is it my map? So that's kind of what I'm getting out of it, is find that balance of that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is like these are all kind of connected, but one of them was slow down. That's another one that was really important for me. When you're going 3 miles an hour for a year, it's you just can't go any faster. I mean, we ran a couple of times, but you can't keep that up, and just being able, even like, it was such a gift driving through Highway 1, Highway 71 in Louisiana, and then coming from Ellick to here. It was like, man, it's just crazy, like how long this took me to walk. And now I can like, oh yeah, I'll be in Natchez in an hour and a half. It's like, man, that took me like, I don't know, a week, maybe 2. So that was, just slowing down and enjoying. You can't really see everything when you're driving like that. But when I was walking, just the people that I met and the encounters that I had, and just, it kind of made me sad coming back through because I only had a limited amount of time. And so there are like so many people that I wanted to see and meet and stuff like that, or meet again. And just with driving and the time crunch, it was like, okay, yeah, that may not happen. But I am grateful for all the people that I did get to see, including coming back to see you.
Yeah. That's on a very micro scale. I say that about downtown Natchez. Melissa and I live around the block, a couple blocks from here, but it's such a different perspective driving these streets. And whenever you walk at nighttime or something, and you just see these beautiful houses lit up and everything, it's like, man, I've never noticed how beautiful that home is, until you really slow down and look at it like that.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine seeing the world like that.
One that was like burned in my memory. I think there's a couple other that I'm not remembering right now, but the last one that is coming to my mind. We were walking with my mom the last day, and I think we're in Beverly Hills, or we're in Santa Monica. Like, we're close. We're like 2 or 3 miles out, and God is such a good God. He just gives us these gifts. There's this huge, right above a car lot, this huge mural, and it said gratitude on it. And I was like, oh man, that's a sign right there, because that was something that was constant throughout the walk of learning to be grateful. We talk about, I'm a millennial. You talk about like the millennial entitlement and stuff like that. And I didn't really think I had that, but over the walk, I did see places in my heart and my mind where I was entitled to things. And when you're walking across the country with just a backpack, you don't have a lot.
You're humbled pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. You're kind of dependent upon God and upon other people, and anything that somebody gives you is a gift. And I was just much more grateful because I didn't have as much. And so that, I'm sure that other people have experienced that to a greater magnitude than I have. But that sign at the end, just this beautiful mural in Santa Monica that said gratitude on it, was something that really hit that home for me, and something I've been done walking now for almost 3 months, and every time I use the bathroom, or every time I go to bed, it's like, oh man, thank you so much for this bed, Lord. This is a gift.
That's funny that you say that, man. Like, in my own life and my own experience, when I was younger, when I was much younger, I had, I was feeling down, depressed, and this and that. And as I've gotten older, I've gotten much happier. But I think the key to that is the gratitude. I genuinely try to appreciate everything, and I fell at it. But when I am grateful for everything, and when I do have that awareness that I'm very grateful for everything in my life, it's hard to not be happy.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's hard to just not be like, man, I'm a happy guy, and I'm grateful, and the Lord has given me so much. And I'm a big believer in what you focus on will grow. And I think when I was a younger person, I focused a lot of my time and my energy on the things that had, trauma, or things that I didn't have at the time. And now, just like you said, using the restroom and stuff like that, it's like, wow, hey, having a roof over your head is pretty nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've spent, maybe a good 10 or 12 hours together, but I can definitely say that you exude that just from the small interactions that we've had. So thank you for that.
Man, I definitely appreciate it. I think I got more of it after our first interview, like that first interview that we did, it really made me kind of go home and think. It was one of those things that it challenged me, and I think that kind of changed me as a person. So I appreciate that from you.
Praise God. Yeah, that's
That's right.
awesome.
Yeah, and we'll take that and hopefully pass it to others. What was a moment? What would you say your most difficult moment? Do you remember something that?
Oh yeah. I don't know if I shared this the first time or not, but it was on the Appalachian Trail in Virginia. Uh, I had this Sawyer water filter, and there's water everywhere on the Appalachian Trail, but you just got to filter it out. So Sawyer was working great, but the plastic piece at the end fell off, and so I put it back in, but I put it back in backwards. And so I filtered some water and was drinking it, and all of a sudden, it was about 11 in the morning. I just started to not feel very good. And
Yeah.
so, I learned later that it was Giardia, which is like a microorganism that gets in there, and you can't eat anything or drink anything without it being
Yeah.
real bad. So
Yeah.
so that happened on the Appalachian Trail. I started to feel bad, and then I got sick, and then I started to sweat a lot because that your body's just trying to get rid of everything in there. So I'm dehydrated at that point,
Which
and
is
and
not good. Yeah.
No. And I'm coming up. I know that there's a water source coming up, and I'm like, okay, I can get some more water because I'm sweating. I'm not feeling good. I'm dehydrated. And I kid you not, there are cows walking through the water source. And I'm like, probably not the best water to drink if I'm already feeling bad. So I kept on moving. And then I got stung by a yellow jacket. This is all within like 2-3 hours. Got stung by a yellow jacket. And then there was a road that I got on that, like, sometimes the Appalachian Trail gets on a road for a little while and then you come off. And I got lost. So within like a 4 or 5 hour period, sick, dehydrated, stung by a yellow jacket, and lost. So I take out my phone. I had a dumb phone at the time, and pull it out. And I'm like, all right, I'm done. Like,
Yeah, I remember that little flip phone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is it. I'm done. I'm calling a cab. I'm calling an Uber. I'm calling my mom. I'm calling somebody. I'm getting out of here. Like, I'm done. I'm done with the walk. Like, I made it this far. I'm grateful for it, but I'm done. And I didn't have any cell service. So I look around for about 30 minutes to an hour, and I see a farmer out in the distance, and I ask him, like, hey, do you know where the trail is? And he didn't know. And so I come back, and I'm upset because I'm expending energy, and I know that there's a gas station in a little town up about like 12, 13 miles up, and I'm like, okay, that's civilization. That's where I need to get to. And then these two guys from North Carolina come up. I don't remember their names, but their trail names were Electric Spring and Sweaty Camel. Because the guys, they got me back on track. We found the trail together, and then they gave me a little bit of water from their own pack, and we camped together that night because I told them I wasn't feeling good. And then they followed me all the way to that gas station. So just really grateful for those guys. And really, really difficult moment, enough to say that I wanted to quit, but
how'd you overcome it? I mean, like, ultimately, how did you started feeling better, and your mindset got back to, okay, I can do it?
Yeah, so it was about 3 or 4 days I was out for the count, and I didn't have enough money at the time to stay at a hostel. So I called and I said, hey, this is my situation. Can I do a work for stay? So sometimes on the Appalachian Trail, you can do a work for stay where you don't have enough money, but they'll let you stay if you do some work. Like, I can't do any work right now.
Yeah.
But if I get better, when I get better, I'll be willing to do as much work as you want me to. And I called. Her trail name was Bunny. She's an awesome lady. She actually still holds the record for the most consecutive times that a woman has walked the Appalachian Trail. So she walked it 3 years in a row.
Wow.
Which is just incredible. So she has a real heart for the people on the trail and loves trail culture. And she was just the best woman ever. She nursed me back to health, got me back on my feet. I couldn't eat for like 3 days. So I think I stayed there like 4 days. And at the end, when I was feeling better, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to work. And she's like, you haven't been feeling good. Like, you can do a couple days worth of work, but you don't have to do it all. I'll take care of the rest. So just like a real good Samaritan moment where she helped me out, and super grateful for her.
I mean, you sounds like, I mean, it was like a legitimate, you could have, not made it out in the woods by yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, like, without water, and like, it's kind of a miracle that you ran across two guys on the trail that got you back to that, and then you got from there to there, and
Yeah.
this lady helped take care of you.
Yeah.
I mean, because without water, you're toast. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's moments like that I hope that I remember when more difficulties come up in life, and I can just be grateful for, like, okay, I got water, I got a roof over my head, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's actually the next two questions that I was going to ask. I'll ask them both because I think
Yeah.
we just talked about them. But you can add anything else you want to add. But did you encounter any unexpected kindness from strangers along the way?
Oh yeah,
I'm sure you have a lot of that, but there's an example right there.
absolutely.
And then the next question was, what were some lessons that you took away? So I think you just answered one.
Yeah,
That was one lesson right there too.
right.
And then I know some of these others, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
There's one thing that comes to my mind. We went through this beautiful national wildlife center in Oklahoma. It had free ranging buffalo on it,
Wow.
and like real old mountains and grasslands in western Oklahoma. It was beautiful. And park ranger showed up. He was just curious. He was doing his job, seeing what we were doing. And we told him a little bit about what we were doing, that we weren't going to camp on the wildlife preserve because that's not allowed to do that. And man, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. So many wonderful people. Thank you if you're watching this.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talked to him, and we talked to him about like him possibly getting a promotion and stuff like that. We prayed for him, and it was really good. And then we were in the Panhandle of Texas. It was unseasonably warm that day, and my buddy Elijah, he wasn't feeling good that day. He had gotten sick overnight, and he was dogging, and we were having to go up and down these hills coming into Memphis, Texas, and yeah, so we had drank more water than we had anticipated because he was drinking more because he was sick, and I was drinking more because I was sweating because it was hot, and so we had about, I think, like 8 miles left to get there, and we're both sweating. We know we're gonna be dehydrated, but like we think we can make it, but not a good situation to be in. And we think we saw on that stretch, it was like a 20 or 30 mile road, and I think we saw like 2 ranches. So
Yeah.
houses were not to be seen at all. And I saw like a police looking truck come down the road, and this is weeks after we meet this other guy in Oklahoma, and we're miles and miles down the road. I see this police looking truck. I didn't get a good look at it because it was going so fast, but I was like, okay, that guy, he looks like he might be a cop. Like he might be okay stopping us or stopping to talk with us, because 2 random strangers you don't know. If he's a cop, he's more likely to stop. So I just waved like this. I don't even know if he would see me. Sure enough, he pulls a Yui. Turns out it's the same guy
No way.
in Oklahoma, and he looks at us. He's like, "Hey, I remember you guys. I'm going to a training in Arizona. I didn't think I'd ever see you again." We're like, "Man, I'm glad to see you. Do you have any water?" He's like, "Oh man, you guys need water?" He kind of looked downcast a little bit, and he got in his truck, and he pulls out like a 32 case from Walmart of water. He's like, "Yeah, I just bought these, but there's a Walmart, 20 miles down the road. I'll pick up some more." And we're just like, "Thank you so much."
Wow.
So that unexpected kindness and the generosity of that guy, that ranger, was really, really amazing.
That is a very random and amazing story right there.
One lesson we learned from that was carry more water than you need.
Yeah. How did you handle the feelings of, whether you want to call it loneliness or isolation or whatever, during those times?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I always saw it as an opportunity to turn to prayer. A lot of times I didn't want to do that, or it didn't feel like it was enough. But a big part of my journey was to learn about more who God was. So in those times of loneliness or isolation, it was always an opportunity to turn to prayer. I guess the lesson that I kind of learned from the isolation and the loneliness was how much of a blessing community is and other people are, and but also at the same time, whenever I experienced any kind of difficulty on the walk, whether it was at the beginning when I was really nervous about where I was going to stay and asking people if I could camp in their yard, or being sick or being lonely or whatever it was, there was always like 2 fundamental moves that could happen. It would be like looking inward for the answer to myself, or looking outward to the answer for God. It's a very similar move. It's like, okay, I need water, or I need help, or I'm lonely. And then just turning that into like a really simple prayer of like, God, I need water.
Yeah.
I'm lonely. Please help me.
Yeah.
So
Just direct prayers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
So that's kind of how I dealt with that. And like a lot of times I don't want to like pretend like it was all roses and butterflies and rainbows. Cause I mean, I spent 6 or 7 months by myself on the road and then 4 months with my buddy Elijah. And there were stops along the way, and obviously people were kind and everything like that. But, you know, it was lonely, you know, at times. And sometimes, you know, emotionally God wasn't there, you know, so it's just like feeling lonely for a good amount of time. But looking back on that time, even like running down these roads that I talked about, like from here to Ellick, it's like, man, I remember just being by myself on this road and with the road in front of me, and there was a grace there from God to keep moving.
So you mentioned something a while ago that was interesting whenever you said you started out and you had all these fears. But you said, when I started, I had all of these fears.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you lose those fears, like of where you're going to stay? Like at some point, are you just like, you know, it'll work itself out?
Yeah. That's what ended up happening. You know, there were times in Arizona or California where it looked pretty dark. Like we weren't going to find a spot. And I would just remind myself, like, hey, you know, you've been providing a place to stay for 10 months. Are you going to stop now? You know,
Yeah.
So some of the accommodations were better than others. Not all of them were the Choctaw, you know, B&B. That place was probably the best, fanciest place I stayed the whole trip here in Natchez. And I'm really grateful also to the Beaumont, who they actually put me up again last night.
Oh, really?
So yeah, super grateful for Elizabeth and Chester and them there. So thank you guys.
Yeah, this area has generosity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so like there were those nights, and there was also the last night of the trip where we kind of we found some sidewalk in West Hollywood, and that was our home for the night. You know.
Wow.
But God provided even in that. You know, nobody messed with us. Nobody. You know, tried to take anything. And
yeah, in West Hollywood, you weren't the only ones out there.
Blend right in. Yeah. Just had to look a little bit shabbier than normal.
Yeah. Man. So what about cultural insights? What about things that you learned about different regions of the country that maybe you didn't?
Yeah.
Maybe you had a different perspective of.
Yeah.
And then just different cultures too, like different types of people.
Right. Yeah. I don't have anything super profound to say about that. I think that for the most part, you'll find good and bad people no matter where you go. I did kind of notice a difference between the South and the Deep South. I don't know if that's something that y'all have here, but I feel like once I got south of Jackson, I was like, okay, now I'm in like the Deep South. But
that dirty side.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had like an extra flavor of that. I think that in the South and in the Northeast particularly, well, the difference between what I saw, because I didn't walk through the Midwest or like the Northwest, it was just the South and then the West really in Texas. I feel like in Texas and in the West, we got a bunch of people who were a little bit more indifferent to like whether or not we stayed on their property. They're like, yeah, you can stay there. That's great. Whereas like in the South, it was a little bit more of like, absolutely not. You're not going to stay here, or absolutely come and stay here. Yeah. And in the West, it was more like, no, I'd rather you not, or like, you know, oh yeah, go ahead. There's the ground, you know.
Yeah.
So that like the extremes in the South, I think I saw, as opposed to the West, which was a little bit less extreme. I think that has to do with like less people being out there and stuff like that. But not to say that I didn't experience extreme generosity in every part of the country. In every state, there were people that had no idea who I was, and they invited me into their home, fed me, gave me a shower. You know, so it's pretty incredible. And I think, I think I said it on the last time I was here, but there's just like so much hope in our country. There's so many good people that are willing to go out of their way to help. That were willing to go out of their way to help me.
And what about different landscapes and stuff like that? Was there anything interesting that you really weren't expecting?
One thing that I didn't expect
out?
was in Northwest New Mexico. How beautiful that road
Oh
was.
man, it's so pretty.
Yeah, 550 with the mountains, and it was wonderful. Another cultural difference that I forgot to talk about on the last question was we've spent about 3 weeks in Navajo Nation in New Mexico and Arizona. So walking through the Navajo Nation was really, really amazing. Walking is more part of their culture there, so we would even see people walking on the road with us, and so I think people were more prepared to be hospitable there. So like I think percentage-wise, more people would hand us food or like just stop and say if you need a ride or whatever. So that was really neat. And everybody knew because we were white that we were not from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, loved that experience, and just some really, really generous people there. One couple even gave us their bed. Like,
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Yeah.
they had a twin size bed and then their bed, and they're like, "You can have our bed, and we'll sleep on the twin bed." That was incredible. But yeah, so there's I mean, yeah, the the Shenandoah Mountains and the Appalachian Trail, and hitting that in the peak of fall, that was unprecedented. Beautiful colors and everything like
Yeah.
that. That wildlife preserve that I mentioned in Oklahoma, that was another favorite. Just seeing the wildness of those buffalo and the beauty of the small ancient mountains and the grasslands, that was incredible. And then the desert had its own kind of beauty to it. Like there would be times where we'd see like one or two cars out, and it's like in the heat of the day, no animals are out. It's just quiet, still, and just vast. Like you just no houses, nothing. It's just you got your water, and I had my buddy Elijah, and we were just making our way through. So there was a beauty there too.
So you probably needed somebody during that period.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Absolutely. That was one thing that switched up and why I finished so much faster than I thought I would. Originally, I thought I'd finish in February, but we took a more direct route because he was able to carry so much more water on his cart. So super grateful for that.
Yeah. He had the hookup, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah. He welded that cart together himself.
Is this going to be a one-time thing, or you got any future plans?
A couple people have asked me that, and I think I'm getting more of an experience of what other people feel like or what they experience when I told them, hey, I'm walking across the country, or hey, I walked across the country. Yeah. I just kind of feel like, man, how does somebody do that? Like,
yeah.
I think about like what I did and how it happened, and I was like, man, there's really no desire right now to do that again. It was the hardest thing I ever did, and like I had so much help along the way. But yeah, I don't think that there's grace there for that journey again. Maybe a bike ride across the country one day, but not walking.
Well, let's stay in that same area. And what about just your post-walk life now? How do you plan to integrate what you learned from this walk into your everyday life now moving forward?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So right after the walk, I told you I went to my grandma's birthday party, and my car broke down in Las Vegas. So my buddy, John, he drove my car 3 days across the country to come to LA. It made it. It was burning oil. I knew something was wrong, but then it made it to Las Vegas too. And in Las Vegas, it died out. And I'm just like, that was another thing to be grateful for. It's like, man, I'm glad we weren't stranded between LA and Vegas because there's a lot of desert in there. And I'm glad my buddy was able to make it to LA and everything like that. But so I had some plans of like going to take my time slow across the country and go see some national parks up north. But because my car broke down, a little bit of a different plan. I ended up, God provided a car through my stepmom, which was awesome, in Vegas. And so what I ended up doing is praying about, okay, God, like, what does this mean? And I felt like he was really encouraging me, and my spiritual mentor at the time was really encouraging me, like, hey, you got all these journals, like, start writing stuff down, like, remember,
Yeah.
It's in the Old Testament, it's incredible how many times the book says, remember the deeds of the Lord, remember the deeds of the Lord, because Satan is always ready to steal, kill, and destroy. He's ready to steal those memories. He's ready to destroy those memories. He's really ready to destroy those memories. So just to remember the deeds of the Lord, what he's done. I've been really grateful for the 2 months that I was in Vegas, and then the couple weeks I was with my sister in Phoenix, and even going across Texas. And now I've been able to get my laptop out, get my journals out, and put a little bit more detail to the chicken scratch that I was able to do in the tent while I was on the walk. And so I would imagine one day that's turned into a book, but I'm not really thinking about that right now. I'm just trying to remember what God did, and then have a finished product of when I look back on it in 10 or 15 years, and then, or even when I'm telling stories to my grandkids, hopefully I'll be able to look back on this document with more detail and be able to remember what God did over that time. So that's one big thing that I've been doing as of recently.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a book in there. That's what I was going to ask you, if you kept a journal and if you did all of that along the way. And
yeah,
I mean, I think that there's a book in there because of I think it's a 2-part book in that it's an entertaining story.
Mm.
So there's some entertainment to the book, but there's also a lot of great lessons in there.
Mm.
It's a life book, and it's a spiritual book, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll buy the first copy once you're ready. Yeah, I mean, just because what we're hitting on is just conversation, but once you really get into that mindset of really getting everything down, like you said, imagine what's going to come out.
Hopefully some good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Last thing I really have is, what message do you want to leave with our listeners about faith and why you did what you did, and faith in their own life and all of that type of stuff?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's a great question. I guess I'd preface this by just reminding everybody of the 3 main reasons why I went on the walk. The first reason was because I realized that in the soup of modern life, I was starting to get away from the ways of God, and I wanted to get back to the ways of God. So using this walk as really a tool for repentance for myself. Not that I'm earning anything, but it's just something that God invited me to learn his ways more fully. So that was the first reason. I wanted to learn God's ways more fully and repent of any sin in my life. The second one was to pray for the country. And then the third one was to trust in his providence. And I think all those 3 things came to pass. I definitely learned about myself in ways that I need to grow. And I think the biggest miracle that God did in my own life was that lack of fear and that trust, lack of anxiety. Just from an experiential standpoint, I was talking to a friend and just talking about discomfort, and how discomfort breeds more and more comfort in uncomfortable situations. So, really being in that uncomfortable situation and seeing how God came through over and over and over again, I have no reason to believe that in any situation he's not going to come through. Oh, another lesson that I forgot about was pray boldly and believe. That's, I guess, one encouraging note that I hope to leave with people is, if I can do this, what's stopping anybody from doing what God is calling them to do? Nothing's too big. And that's one way that I want to live my life moving forward is, if I have a plan and I see how things are going to come to pass without faith, then I might be dreaming a little too small. And so it's just putting all my chips on.
It doesn't scare you to death. Maybe you're not dreaming big enough, right?
That's right. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. Pray boldly and believe. Yeah. Somebody told me that same thing a long time ago. If you think you can do it yourself, you're thinking way too small. It needs to scare you. I mean, and sometimes I think about stuff. I'm like, man, how am I going to get this done? And I'm like, oh wait, that's nothing to God. Just got to turn it over to him. And if he wants it to happen, it will. And if not, it won't. But I just have to be okay with either outcome.
Right.
So yeah,
holding that loosely. Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying. I guess the way I always phrase it is just being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Just trying to, really in any situation in life. I mean, there's so many uncomfortable situations that you just have to, if you're going to survive this thing,
right.
You have to become comfortable being uncomfortable sometimes,
Absolutely.
and because it's tough out there. But
I just want to crush any kind of comparison or anything like that, because I think a temptation for people, or even, you were talking to me about, or somebody was talking to me earlier about like a man that walked across the world, right?
Yeah.
It's like, like whatever crazy thing you do, there's going to be somebody who does something crazy. And, it's not about like doing the biggest or the baddest thing. It's about, what am I uncomfortable with? And then taking a step in that direction. I hope that rather than compare and despair with my journey, I can be a light to people of like, whatever that next step is. Like if you want to run a 5K, or if you want to pray every day, or if you want to pursue that person that you have feelings for, or if you want to, pursue that job that you think you're never going to get, or that degree, or whatever it is, like taking that next step in whatever God is calling you to do into the uncomfortable, then as that uncomfortable thing gets comfortable, then the next uncomfortable thing's going to come, and then having faith that God's going to walk you through that too.
Yeah. And think about the person out there that's on hard drugs or something like that. Their walk to get to where they need to go, figuratively, may be longer than walking across the country. It may be hard. It may be a harder journey for them just to get back to sobriety and where they need to be in their life, even though they're not actually walking.
Yeah.
But their journey may take longer than it took you, and it may be more darkness along the way. So, I think some of these lessons that you're saying can really apply in those journeys too. Anybody's journey.
Right.
What else are we missing, man?
I think we covered a lot, man. I appreciate all the questions. And like I said before we turned on the cameras and everything, that first interview that we did, I just felt so known, and like all the questions and everything, I really got a chance to lay out why God called me and why I was doing this, and so I just really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate this opportunity to share a little bit about the end of the walk. Just to kind of piggyback on what I said, just like lessons that I learned and stuff like that. I think one thing that, as I've been sharing my story with other people, one thing that's really resonated with people was this scripture verse that came to me. I think it was in Virginia, and it was, have no anxiety about anything, but through prayer and supplication, make your requests known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. That's just been a real powerful verse for me, and I think it's a real powerful prayer for anybody who's struggling with that. It says, have no anxiety at all, but through prayer and supplication. So where I learned this was when I was worried about where I was going to stay each night. Waking up in the morning, the first thing I thought about was, where am I going to stay? And then that prayer was like, okay, again, am I going to go inward, or am I going to go Godward? And as I was always saying, like, where am I going to stay? Where am I going to stay? Where am I going to stay? But it says, make your request known to God. It's like, thank you, God, for giving me a place to stay last night. Please help me find a place to stay tonight. And then slowly, it didn't happen overnight, but slowly, the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, guarded my heart and my mind in Christ Jesus. And I think that that surpasses understanding part is really important, because I still had no idea where I was going to stay, but I had peace, like I knew where I was going to stay. So that's just, as I've been sharing that with people, that seems to really resonate. I just wanted to share that, and maybe even end with that.
Yeah, and I think lastly, just to tack onto that, it sounds like that. I used to pray for outcomes whenever I was younger. I think that was another thing. I think that was a reason that I was always disappointed. I would pray for outcomes, and as I've gotten older, I stopped praying for outcomes. I just pray for, put me where you need me. I don't have to have all the things I thought I needed. Just, I want you to provide what you want to provide for me. But I pray for strength, courage, wisdom. I pray that I'm able to take those things and do good with them. That's really my only prayer these days. It's not give me the 4 seasons or whatever. Just whatever it is, just put it in front of me and give me the wisdom to see it, the courage to tackle it, and all of those things. Right. So it sounds like you same type deal where you're just praying more for him to provide, but not necessarily provide this.
Right. Yeah.
And I think when you do that, that opens up a mindset of going back to gratitude, and you're kind of really just happy with whatever he provides.
Yes.
So,
that's a great perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I totally agree.
Yeah. I think that's kind of my version of what I gathered today in a lot of this stuff. But, man, I definitely appreciate you coming back. It's an honor I know I speak for Dustin over here too. It truly is an honor. When we started this a while back, we were just thinking about spotlighting champions and people who are doing great things in this community, but you just happen to be coming through this community. So we're grateful to be a small part of this journey, and we know that, we hope that you'll remember Natchez forever.
Oh, yeah.
And we hope that we're a small part of that. And I know Carla's a big part of that. Yeah. And she's a wonderful person, and thank her. I'd like to thank her for making our friendship possible. Yeah. And thank her for everything that she does. She's an amazing person. She's got her Thanksgiving thing coming up in just, I guess, about 3 weeks now, 3 or 4 weeks now. Yeah, but she'll feed several hundred people again this year. And she does it every year, and she's got different towns that still do it that she came through and started, and they still do it today. So you have to come back to one of those and work it with her.
That'd be so
cool.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so but man, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Again, if go back and watch the first one, the first episode that we did, I think that it's just a lot of great content in there. Thank you to all of our viewers out there. Thank you to all of our partners. I mean, you see these types of conversations. We can't do this stuff without our partners. So thank you to all of our partners. God bless everybody out there. And as always, have a champion day.
Hey, Miss Lou, come visit us, Tom and Wright Granning at Go Mart and On the Go Deli.
Go Mart has clean restrooms, community coffee, an awesome beer cave, and a great selection of anything you may need.
Located at the corner of Highland Boulevard and Highway 61 South in Natchez.
Also stop by Wardo's Po' Boys at 309 North Broadway on the beautiful Natchez Bluff,
where everyone is family.
Guys, Ronnie and Shannon here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we're here at our amazing partners, Gregg Veterinary Hospital.
Gregg Veterinary Hospital has been providing comprehensive, reliable, cutting-edge veterinary services to pets in the Miss Lou since 2002.
They welcome pets of all shapes and sizes who are in need of emergency treatment or who require routine medical, surgical, and dental care.
Dr. Gregg and his team offer a long list of services, including in-house laboratory diagnostics, digital x-ray, soft tissue, orthopedic surgery, dental care, extractions, laser surgery, laser therapy, preventative health, and wellness plans.
And if you need grooming and boarding services, they do that too.
So call Gregg Vet today.
Hi, it's Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight. If you like what we're doing, be sure to follow, like, share, and even comment on all our content. Also, visit MissLouChampions.com to sign up for our newsletter and to receive other information, as well as the opportunity to receive some awesome prizes. Thank you, Miss Lou, for your continued support, and as always, have a champion day.
Hey y'all, it's Ronnie and Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we want to tell you about our awesome partner, J.E. Hicks Distributing Company, also known as Hicks Chicks.
Hicks Chicks is a local, family-owned food distribution company that has been serving the Miss Lou since 1945. You already know they serve all of your favorite restaurants, but did you know that they are also open to the public?
Hicks Chicks has a variety of food products, including delicious heat and eat options like chicken and dumplings, white bean chicken chili, lasagna, and gumbo. They also carry a wide variety of seafood options like shrimp, crabs, tuna steaks, salmon, and catfish.
And don't forget about their delicious burgers that are already pattied up for you, and their amazing dessert options.
So stop by today at 1380 Martin Luther King Jr. Road in Natchez. Hicks Chicks.
Way more than just chicken.
Hey guys, Ronnie Calhoun here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight, and I want to tell you about our awesome partners, Wardo's Po' Boys. Wardo's was created in honor of Alan Ward Granning III, fondly known by family and friends as Wardo. In 2019, the oldest brother of the tribe passed away unexpectedly. His remaining siblings and loved ones wanted to honor his memory in a special way. In 2022, Ward's family decided to combine the need for a sandwich shop in downtown Natchez with a desire to pay tribute to Ward's love of good friends, good times, and great food. Through blood, sweat, tears, and countless hours of hard work, Wardo's was born. So go visit Wardo's today at 309 North Broadway Street in Natchez, where the po' boys are so good, you'll swear you're in Cajun country.